Good evening, everybody. Welcome back into Sports and Money in collaboration with Phantom Sports. I am Benjamin Parker. We are again joined by Lee McManus from Phantom Sports. He writes, Lee, how are you tonight, man?
I'm doing well, thank you, Ben.
For
I'm
those of
I'm
you
ready
who
to dive into this a bit because as a Dolphins fan, of course, I follow the AFC East pretty closely.
there's so much to talk about. Of course, we won't even come close to talking about all of it tonight's video, but we'll do what we can. For those of you who don't know, me and Lee just finished a video on the Dolphins. That'll be up on YouTube as well on both sites. So whichever platform you prefer to watch it on, you can catch it there as well if you didn't watch it already. Welcome in, though. We are going to talk about the AFC East, the Bills, the Patriots, the Dolphins, and the Jets. There's a lot of storylines going on. Let's start right at the top with what looks to be one heck of a football team this year, and that's the Buffalo Bills. Talk to us just a little bit about, before we even get into win-loss record, just what this team might look like this year.
I think the Bills, they were 40 seconds away from already making a Super Bowl last year, because I would have anticipated them. No offense to Cincinnati, but based on what I saw, especially from their offense, the first two playoff games, I would have expected them to be in the Super Bowl. So there were two bad defensive plays from already making one. And then against the Rams, I think that's a straight up even game. So that's a coin flip game, the same way the Cincinnati and the Rams ended up being. So yeah, they weren't that far away from where they wanted to be last year. Von Miller's an excellent addition. I think I was looking through their depth chart. And I can tell you somebody from Miami who a lot of people wish they kept, that Buffalo picked up. I don't know how much he'll play, how much he'll contribute, but behind a bad offensive line, Duke Johnson actually did some very good things for Miami. I thought that was a little bit under the radar that they picked him up. They say they have some problems with their offensive line last year. Whatever offensive line issues they had, they were still far ahead of Miami. So if they've improved any on their offensive line, and Von Miller can add anything at all to their pass rush, they were the number one defense in yards given up last year. So if Von Miller helps their pass rush any at all, this is going to be a top 5 defense again. And with all they have on offense, if they have any running game and improved offensive line, yeah, they should be in the Super Bowl this year. And that hurts the Dolphins fan to say, obviously, but they're that good. I think they're a well-coached team. The progress Josh Allen has made based on what was expected of him coming out in the draft has been impressive. I give him a lot of credit for putting in the time and effort to improve as much as he has. And so, yeah, I think it's 100% fair for Bills fans to expect their team to be in the Super Bowl, for Sunday in February.
There's a lot of people talking about Buffalo doing just exactly that. Now, I'm going to give you an over-under here in just a second, and pushes aren't allowed, so you got to pick the over or the under. But, again, and this is a number that will fluctuate depending on which website you look at, which time of the year you're able to grab this number. But let's set it at 11.5. That's the last time I looked at DraftKings. So if you have an over-under of 11.5 wins, are you taking the over or the under on that for Buffalo?
I'm expecting the road to the Super Bowl to go through Buffalo, which I think, since the Chiefs are right around the same number of 12 or 13 wins, if that's the case, if Buffalo has home field to bye, I would expect them to have between 12 and 13 wins. I would take the over for them. I would. Based on how good they already were last year and how close they were to being there, to having home field and to, making the Super Bowl last year and what they've added. Yeah, I would say 12 or 13 seems reasonable to me.
it should be an exciting year for Buffalo fans. I think they're really looking forward to this season.
Yeah,
Like maybe they haven't since the early '90s, to be honest. It's been a
no,
while
no
since they had a
doubt.
team this good and
Sure,
knew it ahead of time.
sure.
Brings us to the Patriots. Bill Belichick, continuing to try to work and win a Super Bowl without Tom Brady. They were 10-7 last year, had a good record, but there were lots of ups and downs involved. Mac Jones will be there at quarterback again. Talk to me. I think the most important thing here maybe is how good is Mac Jones? Is he a bit limited, or can he be a top flight quarterback, say a top 10 maybe quarterback in this league? Just how good can the Patriots be with Mac Jones, say, over the next 2 to 3 seasons?
The Patriots have a problem with wide receiver evaluations the same way the Dolphins have a problem with offensive line evaluations. Part of the problem with the Patriots evaluating wide receivers is I was thinking about this. Tom Brady just, based on our wide receiver, who forget Hall of Fame level Randy Moss, who he had for a couple of seasons, made Pro Bowls on a regular basis. I couldn't think of anybody in the almost 20 years he was there that was a regular Pro Bowl wide receiver. So I think maybe that colored Bill Belichick's evaluations of wide receivers. I have somebody who can take a decent starter on another team and make them look so much better, because I just don't. If Mac Jones improves, great, but who does he have? They're really. I'm thinking. The Dolphins and Bills have excellent secondaries. Particularly, I believe it's if White is back and healthy. Tremaine White is the one who was injured last year, I believe, for the Bills. If he's back and healthy, they have an excellent secondary. Micah Hyde is an excellent safety. So who threatens those guys? Who threatens the likes of Xavier Howard and Byron Jones on the Patriots? Devontae Parker? Yeah, if he can be healthy, he can do some things, but that's a huge if. So I just don't know that when you talk about putting so much on a young quarterback, you first have to look at, okay, who do they have around him that can help him grow? And I just don't see it with the Patriots. I think their defense is still going to be pretty solid. I think the loss of J.C. Jackson is a huge one. I don't know that you can find an easy replacement for him. I still think there's no reason, if you're a Patriots fan, not to believe in Bill Belichick, but some of these things that happened this off season leave you scratching your head a little bit as to why they didn't try to add more. Because here's the thing with a young quarterback, Ben, the earlier you can start adding pieces around them, the better, because the more they show you, the more expensive they're going to be pretty quickly, which is why I think it was so important to try and add pieces around Mac Jones this season, and Zach Wilson and Tua. All three of them are still on rookie contracts. And so I think that's, I think the Jets we'll get into them in a minute, but I think they've done a little bit better job. I like some of the weapons that are there for Zach Wilson more than Mac Jones. I do think Mac Jones certainly showed a lot more than Zach Wilson last year. But as far as who he has to throw to, I'm not too thrilled about that if I'm a Patriots fan.
Let's go ahead and talk about the Jets for just a minute. We'll come back to, of course, your specialty, the Dolphins, in just a moment.
Sure.
The Jets were 4-13 last year. It was not a good season. It was pretty rough. Talk to me about, from a distance, from a Dolphins fan standpoint, what do you think the Jets' chances are of being good this year, of being competitive this year versus the 4-13 that they had last year?
I think there's I did a crash of listening to a ton of podcasts today. Now, just to get everybody else's perspective on these teams, and I think there's a good deal of optimism to cautious optimism with Jets fans. And from their standpoint, having been through all these cycles with a lot of young quarterbacks, so often, especially the past decade, you know, you go from Sam Darnold and why can't I think of a couple others? But there, you know, Mark Sanchez is another. Sorry, I don't know why his name's slipped my mind for a second there, but there have been a number of them who they've gone through and they haven't panned out. I think, to me, Zach Wilson is in the best position of any of those with who he has around him, especially their offensive line, which was already solid last year. He has the best opportunity of any of them based on Elijah Moore is an excellent wide receiver. He did some damage against Miami last year. So they have some pieces there. I think their defense for a very long time now has been pretty solid. And I think there's an excellent defensive coach in Robert Saleh who's only going to help with some of that development of someone like Sauce Gardner, who's going to be butting heads with with Hill and Waddle. So I think they have some reasons for optimism there for the first time in a while. I'm expecting them to. Their ceiling this year, to me, as good as the AFC is about 6 games, maybe. I think 6-11 is a perfectly reasonable record for them, and if they achieve anything beyond that, that's a pretty solid season for them.
Let's talk about your specialty, the Dolphins. Of course, you
Sure.
write for Phantom Sports, covering the Dolphins. They were 9-8 last year, and of course, Brian Flores is gone. You've got a new coach there with Mike McDaniel. Tua Tagovailoa still going to be the quarterback. You've got a few new offensive pieces. The defense looks decent. If I set the over-under at 9, which again, it'll be a fluctuating number,
Sure.
but if I set the over-under at 9, I think that's a tough number. Which side of that are you going to take?
Well, as we mentioned in the Dolphins video, I'm a little bit more optimistic than I am cautious. I feel there are 10 winnable games on the schedule for Miami if the offensive line is better. I really do. So I would go over for now, just based on the fact that the offensive line has improved with Armstead and the Taron Armstead and Connor Williams signings. I think they have 3 good backs that can complement each other well. I think both of those things will help Tua enough with a solid defense that I believe they can get to 10 wins, slightly over that number. But then you look at the tougher games they have, and it's just a question of them having enough to get beyond that number to make sure they get into the playoffs. I would lean slightly toward the over for now. I'm not trying to hedge my bets too much here, but yeah, I would say that if you look, their offense showed very little production the last 2 years, and it was the defense that carried them. And they won 9 and 10 games. I realize the rest of the AFC is improved, but if there's enough improvement in the offensive production with a solid defense, I think they can win 10 games. That is my belief based on what I've seen them do this offseason.
Let's talk about the rankings for these 4 teams. What's your predicted order of finish for the Bills, Patriots, Dolphins, and Jets? Where do you think they finish this year?
I think it's going to be the Bills first. I don't think there's much question about that. They're, as I said, a well-coached team that has plenty on both sides of the ball to get to and finally win a Super Bowl. Maybe if they run into the Bucks or Rams at that point, it would be a different story. It would be fairly close, but I'm expecting them to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. It's just so hard to. Miami, I believe, has enough to finish second, but as we talked about in the Dolphins video we just did, there's so many teams right in their area in terms of wins or what you can project them as that it's hard to say that they're going to beat out a Baltimore Ravens. And I will say this. I know Miami has a tough start to the season, but if I'm a Dolphins fan, week 2 at Baltimore, because the number of times that Miami has had a chance to make the playoffs and it's come down to that Baltimore Ravens game, there have been a few times that's happened. So if I'm a Dolphins fan and I see them beat the Ravens week 2, that's going to give me some hope, especially at Baltimore with a healthier Ravens team that lost to Miami and last year. If that happens, I think that would be a signal to me that Miami's on the right track early in the season. So if there's one game, maybe on this entire schedule, outside of the couple of Buffalo games, that I would circle, if I'm a Dolphins fan, it would be that Ravens game. Is a tell for me is whether they have a really good chance to make the playoffs or not, because that's the team they're going to be competing with for a playoff spot, no doubt.
One final question, and we'll shut it down for the night. And again, just so the audience knows, we didn't prep for this, but I'll throw it out to you anyway,
Sure.
just for fun. There's 4 quarterbacks here in this division, and I think they're all pretty young. You got Josh Allen, who's not a kid anymore, but he's still on the younger end. You have Mac Jones, of course, for the Patriots, Wilson for the Jets, and then Tagovailoa for the Dolphins. If you had to rank them right now, which one would you take first and which one would you take last?
Well, let me just go ahead and say, so my overall rankings beyond, I think it's going to be the Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, and Jets. That's how I have it, based on what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. So I would say that you have to rank Allen and Mac Jones. Mac Jones made a Pro Bowl last year. That's we can argue some other people didn't play, were injured. Okay, he still made one. And I think he was worthy of that selection. Then Tua is ahead of Zach Wilson right now. Based on, and that's not just based on me being a Dolphins fan. I think he has a little more around him in the wide receiver, tight end, and running back department. Wilson has a better offensive line. I'll say that. But everything else around Tua is better, to where I think he can show a little more growth this season. Zach Wilson, there's a wide variety of opinion on. People aren't sure what the Jets have in him just yet, so I think he has to rank 4th in these rankings.
Fair enough, man. Listen, it's been a pleasure to have you on board. Tell everybody again, I know we did it last video, tell everybody again where they can find your work at. I'm on Phantom Sports. In addition to the Dolphins, I've written about a little bit of done a little bit of basketball, even the Winter Olympics, and a little bit of baseball as well. So I've written about a wide variety of sports there, and they can follow me at Lefty Tiger Fan on Twitter. Lee, it's been a privilege to have you on board, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. You can catch us on Phantom Sports. You can catch us on Sports and Money. Phantom Sports has the written website where there's tons of articles, and Lee just mentioned that on all kinds of sports. You can get it there. We'll see you next time. Have a great one. Goodbye.